and use the headphones.
Okay. Okay. Is the stream working now?
I'll check. Yeah, it is.
Okay, good. So it seems like we've got the audio sorted on stream now, so we can go back to commentating on the race. Okay. It's still qualifying. Good to get these issues sorted now. Having some noob problems. Okay. So we've got a few people on outlaps. Still riding board with Owen for his first lap on the softs. As he barrels into La Source. This is the apex line and he gets some good traction all the way down into Eau Rouge and then Radion, taking the shortest line possible to minimise the distance and minimise the time. And through the first sector timing split, it's a 10th up in the medium lap, which is okay considering there's only one corner. Now we're going through the grip dependent middle sector, shifting down all the way to second to get that extra rotation in, and then short shifting to fifth to try and get as much traction as possible into Pouon. Thought about keeping it as seventh but shifted back down to sixth and touched that curb, which can be so deadly if you just clip it even 1% more than that. Being careful with the curbs through here. It's all the way down to third to get, presumably, to get as much rotation as possible, and then all the way down to Blanchimont into what used to be the bus stop chicane. It's flat out with no DRS zone, which is quite interesting for the race because being in second is no longer as powerful as it used to be, as Owen comes across the line and sets a 42.7, which is provisionally pole position for him. We can see some other people are on laps. And Dr. Fails has binned it, unfortunately. Hopefully we'll be able to set another lap. Who else is on a lap? Twinsicle. Going down into 8th gear on the entry to Pouon. In 7th gear. This looks like a pretty decent lap. How much curb? Not much. They seem to be staying away from the curbs, and there is a pretty good reason why, because they can be pretty deadly if you don't mount them absolutely perfectly. So we're going into Blanchimont again, and then into the bus stop, keeping a nice and short line, and then braking a bit after the 100-meter board, kissing the curb, and then going a bit wide at the apex, and then losing it on traction. That is not what you want to finish off the lap, and it is a 43.6. Who else is on a lap? You can see Adam the Peach is, or Lepage, I'm not sure is on a lap now. I think he's just starting lap, was he? I think he's just finished his lap, yeah. As we see, Ollie is barreling into the chicane, braking just after the 100-meter board, kissing the curbs a bit more nicely, and then getting good traction off the exit and up into 4th place with the 43.4 as everyone's on their final laps now, as there's only about, I think it was 20 seconds left in quali. You can see, I don't think Owen's, was he on a push lap? That might have been invalidation. He might be on a push lap. Short shifting into 4th. We're only kissing the curb. That's the inside curb. There's one you can properly use to gain lap time. Staying well clear of the insta-spin curbs of Pouon. And then into this fast chicane. Staying clear of the inside curbs, which are not your best friend at this track on this year's game. And then it's flat out all the way from here to the bus stop, and we'll see if he can improve on his current lap time, which was, and he's backing off, so I presume that he wants to drive into the pits to keep his tyres as fresh as, no, he's going to cross the finish line and then let the AI do the in-lap and add an extra few percent onto his tyres, which is interesting, but might make a more spicy race. As we're just having the final few people cross the finishing line now. Just Reed Hakkinen to cross the line, and I think based off the time there must have been a mistake on this lap, and they dive into the pits, and that will be the end of qualifying. Onto the race now. The game doesn't want to plonk me into the race, which is interesting. I guess we're still waiting for the final car to be pushed into the pits. And there we are, qualifying finished. So the final results are Owen on pole, followed by Dino, and then here's the rest of the grid, all within about a second, so it's a very competitive grid, and it'll be interesting because it seems like it'll be a three-way fight for the win with the DRS trains. You can see that Owen's actually done quite a few laps on his tyres, so he might not do so well during the race. There haven't been any pit stops in quali, and there's not really much I can do as a spectator. I guess we'll scroll through the incidents. There's not even much to scroll through. I guess here's all the tyres everyone has used. Interesting that two people have only used a single set of tyres, which means that they'll have two brand new sets of soft tyres to use for the race, which is not necessary at Spa. Typically you only need, it's a pretty easy medium soft or soft medium, and the softer compounds are definitely a lot better at Spa than the harder ones. Although if there's an early safety car, those who start on mediums from the back might want to do a soft instead of another strategy, because the softs are just so fast around this track. So we're going to start off in about 15 seconds. And the game's not giving me any more cameras than this. So you can see the podium that our eventual winners will be virtually standing on. As hopefully the formation lap is starting now. As we're going to ride on board with our pole sitter Owen, and then also let's see what tyres everyone is on. So you can see that the top 10 have all starting on the softs that they set their fastest lap on quali on, as per the rules. It's quite interestingly, P11 and 12 have gone for softs, 13 and 14 have gone for mediums, which is what I would have expected, and then P15 has decided to go for hards, which is quite interesting because mediums can definitely do the entire race around here. Although the hards will probably be fast in the last few laps. It's probably only like the last few laps that the hards would be fast, and they'll be way slower the first like 10 laps of the race, which will make it a bit tricky to stay in the DRS train. You can see that KC Racing is really taking their time to do the formation lap, or maybe it's that the leaders are going quickly, as the game gives some pit stop strategies that I personally disagree with. Although, and we have a spin on the formation lap. Good thing that damage is turned off on the formation lap. That might add 0.1% tyre wear on the hards, but it's certainly going to be good for heating up the rear tyres, which is typically quite difficult on the hards. So you can see everyone else is doing their last bit of tyre warming as they very slowly proceed their way onto the grid. And I think the AI has just taken control over Owen's car, so we'll see them slowly queue up onto the grid. You can see that the Haas at the back has been able to catch up, given how slowly they've been going. And now we're going to... What is this camera? Oh my goodness. Okay. Finally, that's not a great camera. Okay. 3 red lights fall... 5 red lights. And away we go, and Owen is immediately off to a good start and coming back across the racing line to get a good launch, as the McLarens are 1-2 for a moment. So we can see them barreling down the Kemmel Straight through Eau Rouge, and don't do a 2-stop at Spa, please. Just don't. And we can see that 9 is just saving the battery and letting the leaders battle it out, as Owen leads heading into the second sector. Has there been anything else happening down the field? As Exio is making up tons of positions, despite the mediums, which at this point will be probably a second a lap slower than the softs and have a lot less grip. And especially given that the field spread is only about a second a lap, it's going to make a pretty big deal, as we can see that the Alpine is trying to go is trying to jostle for position and is a bit too greedy on the throttle and gets a slight tank slap and is now under pressure from the Haas, who eventually backs out and cedes position as we head on to the end of the first lap. And it seems like the Haas at the back has, unfortunately, I think that's a front wing loss, so might have been caused by touching the curb at P1, I'm not sure. As actually Dino's got ahead of Owen. You can see Owen's using all the battery to try and get past. Slipstream on this game is not that powerful, however on such a long straight it can make such a big deal, as they've got a 1.4 second gap behind, so they've broken out of the DRS. As you can see, it's just a drag race. It's Dino using the battery, well, it's got about 25% less, so I would say that is a yes, as we have position changes happening throughout the entire field, as the Red Bull of Zeno is still in 10th, but doing an amazing job to keep up with the rest of the pack. This could be like a really good result when switching over to the soft tyres nearer to the end of the race, as the Haas at the back has just left the pit lane on medium tyres, maybe going to the end or maybe going to box for softs later on. As we can see, Owen is following really closely behind. We go into this other really long straight where the slipstream is also really powerful, using a small amount of battery. You can see that Owen is about 30% more now, so has really been saving the battery quite well, and you can see he's just gaining heaps of time with the slipstream as they make their way through the bus stop, and DRS is about to get enabled this lap, so I think it will be a pretty easy pass unless Dino decides to dump the battery and Owen save, but that's not a great exit. So Owen, if he wants to get past this lap, he'll have to use a decent chunk of battery. Seems like Dino's just saving, so is Owen for now, as now they're spending a bit more battery to try and in their jostle for track position. We can see slightly further back, it's almost 3 wide, as you can just see the power of the DRS, as the AlphaTauri presumably was first and then down to third. And the gaps are just really tight in the midfield, as you can see that the Red Bull of Zeno is just watching back. And unfortunately, Adam Lepage has already got the first time penalty of the race. Time penalties will likely be quite critical at this track, given how many corners you can extend. And if you get a 3-second... Twinsicle has had a massive crash. Will that bring out the safety car, the virtual safety car? The question is, will anyone decide to box? You can see Owen queuing up behind. It's only going to be a virtual safety car, although they'll get a pretty big discount on the pit stop. Personally, I would stay on softs, as Dino's in, but Owen stays out. This is going to be spicy. What tyres are they going to go on is going to be another question. I think some of them will go for hards and some of them will go for mediums, although I personally would go for the mediums. Seems like there's a large mixture of them. Some have also... See that Dow Econip has actually decided to go for soft tyres here, which will be very fast for now. However, they cannot make it to the end, so there will have to be another pit stop, and I'm not sure if that counts as the second tyre compound as the virtual safety car is back in, so the gap from Owen to Dino right now, I think, let's just wait for it to stabilise. It's about, I think, about 14.8 seconds, so we can see what the gap's going to be in a few laps time. I think the softs at this point will still be slightly faster than even brand new mediums. You can see that there's a 3-car long DRS train back here with all 3 runners on brand new mediums. It's going to be interesting to see if they're going to go side by side and give us some entertainment. As there's a yellow flag, and it seems like there's been a crash further back, or a spinner. The Alpine probably using the deadly curbs and coming off worse. Fortunately, it seems like there isn't any damages. Owen has interestingly decided to pit. I'm not sure why. I don't think there was a front wing swap. But that is a very interesting choice. Why has Owen decided to pit now? And he's lost like 3 seconds or more to Dino. I would have expected him to go quite a few laps longer on the softs to then maximise the medium tyres, but this is an interesting choice that I think may have just ceded the win. So we're riding on board the soft, the Williams using the soft tyres, who's trying to chase down Owen. Owen is a pretty quick driver, however I don't think that the mediums will have the grip that he wants, though he is able to make it work. He's barreling into Pouon and is gaining heaps of time on Dr. Fails, who is on tyres that have started the race, so have done 4 racing laps plus the formation lap, so they're going to be about 5 laps older, which is a somewhat decent difference. Nowhere near as big as Singapore, for example, but the fresher tyres will definitely help Owen. I'm wondering why he's using the battery, because I think it will be a pretty easy pass down the Kemmel Straight with the DRS, and I suspect he's just going to get stuck behind at La Source. As Dr. Phils has decided to let him go. That's very interesting. I don't know why. Maybe he doesn't want to get involved. But he's lost another position, and I don't think he'll even be in DRS, as he's 1.1 seconds by now. 1.2, yeah, he definitely won't be in DRS. As we ride on board with Owen, who's 2.5 seconds behind Dino with the 1 lap fresher tyres, which I'm not sure will make too much of a difference, but we'll see at the end of the race. Go further back, we can see that the Alpine is making a pretty simple DRS pass on the AlphaTauri, and Adam Lepage is just sitting behind and waiting. Although I think he's been struggling to keep up to the back of them, given that he's had to use a pretty decent chunk, as he almost bins it. That was a pretty good save, to be honest. If you get too greedy on the traction on this track, it will bite you back really hard. You can see him making it through the chicane and then into... Oh, I forgot the name of this corner. But they're going down the straight into Blanchimont, and he's right on the bubble of losing DRS, but so is the AlphaTauri on the Alpine. And it seems like as they approach the detection point for the short DRS, so none of them will have DRS. you can see that 9 is closing up to the back of Dr. Fails on 4-lap pressure medium tyres. 7/10 is quite far back, but we'll see with the DRS, as neither of them are using much battery going through Radeon. It's going to be interesting because they're 5/10, 4/10, 3. Ooh, this is going to be spicy. It seems like Dr. Fails wanted to give up, as there's been a virtual safety car. Something happened. Doesn't seem like anyone has retired. No, someone. That's interesting. Maybe trying. And now that is an odd place. I don't know what was happening, as now upgraded to a full safety car. This might be a blessing or a curse for Zeno, as softs can make it without puncturing to the end, but they won't be quick at the end, although they'll be quick now. It's going to be a very interesting choice, because you kind of have to box under safety car, otherwise you're just going to be so far behind in terms of, you're going to lose, I think it's about 18 seconds, the pit lane transit time. Gonna see whether he goes for softs or hard, because you can't do mediums because of the 2 tire, and it seems like he's gone for hard tires, which right now might be okay versus their multiple lap old mediums, but will certainly be better by the end of the race. You can see him emerging out just ahead of the McLaren in 3rd place. So Zeno's in the box seat to win this race. Assuming the leader's tyres go off. You can see that some people further down the grid have decided to box for soft tyres, which, as I said earlier, are insanely fast, but they're going to be pretty second-hand by the end of the race. So we'll just go into the race director to see how many track limit warnings everyone's got. So quite a few. And on drivers we can see the strategies, though interestingly Dr. Fails has decided to stay out on the mediums, which I don't think I would do personally. And there's Mardau Iconip, who's decided to go soft, hard, which I honestly do not understand. The mediums can definitely make it to the end from here. That's just such a strange strategy. Like, if you're doing a 2-stop, why would you use the hard tires? Because if you're doing soft, that restricts you to a 2-stop. And we can see that, unfortunately, 2 of the 15 runners will not make it to the end, as we're just queuing up behind the safety car. I don't think it will be in this lap. We'll find out as it crosses into the 3rd sector now, and it is staying out for presumably one more lap, as they're all lining up and their tyres are going to be brick cold at this point. It's going to be interesting to see what the soft runners of GR and Zeke can do, because they'll have a lot more grips than 3 or even 7 lap old mediums, or even brand new hards now. The delta's probably about 1.5 seconds a lap, so it will be interesting to see as we head around for another lap around the safety car. I've got to go for a few seconds to get some water, but I will be back soon by the safety car restart, as Reed Hakkinen for some reason has boxed. So it seems like Reed Hakkinen has boxed for a brand new set of medium tyres, although I'm not sure if they will have been used in qualifying and be like a few percent old, but they'll certainly be a lot better than the tyres. I'll just check the race director again. Yeah, so he's gone soft, medium, presumably wanting to have the freshest tyres, which is probably going to be worth it given that not many positions had to be given up in the pit stop, and you're going to be right on the back of the DRS train when we get back racing underway, presumably at the end of this lap. So you just cycle through all the runners under the safety car. It will be interesting to see what Dr. Bales does, because I'm not sure what strategy they're going for, because they started on the mediums, which normally would be indicate a medium soft, but I just don't understand why they'd be just letting people through for like the part through laps as the safety car's in the lap, which means they all have the throttle limiter, which means that they can't heat their rears up. And it's actually, I had a league race on Thursday where someone basically almost binned it on the safety car restart because their tyres were like 70 degrees and had absolutely no grip. So we can just see that Dino is leading the pack, trying to warm the tyres. We'll see if Owen can get the jump as they're just approaching the bus stop, as the safety car pulls into the pit lane now. Will be interesting to see when they go. They still haven't gone. And now they're go. And it seems like Owen hasn't had the best start. So the Red Bull of Zeno's also coming under pressure, presumably from the brick cold or ice cold hard tyres, which will be a lot harder to switch on. You can see lots of people going side by side into Eau Rouge before deciding to back out. Probably the sensible move, as it's just a slipstream fest, and we can. And behind, the soft runners are side by side going. Ooh, as Adam Lepage almost bins it on that curb, as it seems like 9 has unfortunately spun in the battle with Zeno, but it's going to be interesting to see how much inroads these soft runners can make whilst their tyres are fresh and fast. As Dino has a 3-second time penalty, which is going to be absolutely brutal come the end of the race, because now all Owen needs to do is stick in his DRS and not get any more warnings. So you can see the Alpine has spun on the curb, and also unfortunately has taken out the Mercedes after failing to ghost, which is going to be utterly devastating for both their racers. And as the Alpine has decided to retire on track, the question is, will that bring out another safety car? Because you're not supposed to retire on track, you're supposed to do it in the pit lane. And it seems like there will not be any safety car. You see GR, the other soft runner, has decided to pit, probably due to front wing damage, but it seems like there will not be a safety car this interruption. So the soft runners have really not had a good start, as Owen just tucked in the slipstream of Dino and has about 20% more battery and doesn't have a penalty. So we can see that Dr. Fails is continuing his slide back through the grid. However, fortunately has a 4.5 second gap. However, that appears to be getting eaten up very quickly by the newer medium tyres on the McLaren compared to the 10-lap-old tyres that the Alfa Romeo started the race on. Actually, let's go into Race Director to see how many penalties Owen has. Seems like he has 2 warnings. We'll see if either of them are for contact. So, first track limit, and then another track limit. So, Owen is on 2 warnings, so we'll have to be very careful to not get a third one, because then if he gets a third one, he'll need to overtake Dino to win the race, and also will be put under threat by the Red Bull of Zeno, who just seems to be waiting for the tyres to slowly phase in, and then maybe mount an attack later on in the race as the mediums, as that is not good for the tyres, as probably due to the fact that the tyres aren't that great, but getting that much wheel spin does not keep the rear tyres alive, which is and rear tyre wear is quite important at this track, because if you have too much, you just can't take any of the curbs without spinning, as the leaders are going side by side, as Owen gets that penalty I've been talking about for the past half a lap, almost as if I'm psychic. It will be interesting to see if the stewards decide that could be removed, but of course if he gets another penalty at some point in this race, it won't do anything if that penalty gets removed, as they're blasting through into the chicane, keeping off the curbs, not wanting to spin. You can use those curbs, but it's just incredibly risky, and it's understandable, as Dino appears to be dropping back a little bit. Maybe it's the extra lap on the tyres, as they both appear to be using battery, but Dino has a decent amount left, as they're going to move on to lap 13 in a few seconds time, and we'll see if Dino will repass with the aid of the drag reduction system on the Kemmel Straight. But I think they'll have to be mindful of not doing too many shenanigans because of the Red Bulls behind, which are on hard tyres, which by the end of the race will be certainly better than their mediums, partly because the mediums are just so much older, and also the fact that the Red Bulls don't have time penalties yet. Dino's draining all the battery and almost pulls alongside with Owen, but decides to back out, as Owen has about 25% more, so did spend a bit of trees. Now the Red Bull gets a penalty for track limits, so now it's all down to Ollie to see if he can win. On the slightly older hard tyres, they will probably be marginally quicker than the mediums by the end, but not by too much, because the hards are just not that great of a tyre. So we see that Dino's actually dropped out of DRS of Owen, and it seems like Owen's got the trophy on one hand already, assuming he doesn't get a 6-second time penalty. And it seems like Dino's been able to claw back into DRS by completely burning all of the battery, which is going to be absolutely critical, but there's a limit to how much you can burn the battery, because Owen has 40% more at this point in time, and presumably won't burn too much down the Kemmel Straight after the detection point, as Dino is just within DRS as they cross the detection point, as Owen is deciding to use some of the battery, but Dino's basically out at this point and isn't really gaining much time despite having the aid of the DRS simply because of the amount of electrical power that Owen is able to use. You can see further back that Dr. Fails is just continuing to drop like a rock. I think he's waiting for another safety car to then box for brand new softs. Although the issue at this point is that the leaders could also pit for brand new softs and still be quite far ahead. I wonder if he'll box now. As there's yellow flags out in Sector 2 as Ollie Ball has binned it and has retired from the session, unfortunately. Will this bring out a safety car that Dr. Fails has been so dearly waiting for the hope of? Seems to be a no. See that Dino has been able to catch back up to Owen again somehow, despite being like 1.1 seconds behind going into the final sector, as Owen has over 40% more battery than Dino at the minute, as Dino will be inside the 1 second margin of Owen as they cross the detection point and then onto the DRS straight. The rear wing flap opens and it's gaining a small amount of time, although Owen might be running lower wings. Although he's actually used a pretty decent chunk of battery, so maybe they're running more similar wings. This is going to be an interesting battle as it develops. See if Owen can hang on to the lead. As Dino's taking that corner in 6th gear, interestingly. Normally you'd take it in 4th or 5th. As someone in chat says, Big Ollie Fool. Oh, I forgot to read it out, but 44% of you think that's someone else will win, although I should have read that out last. 33% Dino, 11% Owen, and then another 11% for Jakub Mazinski. And it seems like it's going to be either Dino or Owen at the current rate. So 44% of you appear to be correct, but anything could happen in the next 7 laps in the race, as it seems like Dino's been able to close up a bit to Owen, as Owen's using a bit more of the battery. It will be interesting to see if this stalemate continues for the rest of the race, because neither of them seem to be saving much battery, as Dr. Fails finally pulls into the pits to get rid of those aging mediums and moves on to softs. It'll be interesting to see if there'll be any purple laps coming out soon. You can see Dino is just tucked within the DRS of Owen. And as we move back through the grid, you can see that the hards on Mardau Econet are starting to phase into the race, as he's able to close up to the Alpha Tauri, whose rear light was flashing a few moments ago, which indicates that they're under 10% on the battery. So the Williams has about a 30% advantage, and also takes the chicane much more nicely as they move onto the long flat out section where the slipstream is very powerful, just given its length. I'm not sure taking the grass saves time. It is a shorter line, but I'm not sure off-roading is too good for the rolling resistance of the car and probably slows you down. You can see it's not a great exit. Dr. Fails unfortunately gets a time penalty presumably from all that additional grip of the soft tyres, just turning in too early and then getting an immense amount of turn in and then cutting the corner. You can see the Williams is tucked right up under the gear, maybe not under the gearbox at this point, but it's going to be a pretty simple DRS pass given the incredible length of the straight. We now move back to our leaders, who are still line astern, still 6/10 apart. You can see that Dino's actually saved up a tiny amount of battery and runs wide. That might be another track limit warning. So if either of them get a 6-second penalty, it's going to be their race over unless the other also gets a penalty. It's going to be interesting to see. So it seems like Dino's using all the battery in the final sector to stay within DRS of Owen, and then Owen's using his battery on the Kemmel straight to counteract DRS. If I was Owen, as there's a yellow flag in sector 2, and it seems like the Alpha of Reed Hakkinen has spun, unfortunately, but it seems like he's able to get going again. Although those tyres will be pretty yeah, the rear tyres are definitely frying at the minute. I suspect that he'll box for softs and try and go fastest lap. Although right now, he is set to get 2 points. Although 10th place plus fastest lap is also 2 points. So he decides to stay out, presumably because the tyres have cooled back down. So we can see that the AlphaTauri, who got overtaken earlier, is trying to have an attempt to repass the Williams, as Dino's just lost. Dino was 4/10 behind Owen, but has now doubled that as the virtual safety car is out. I wonder what's happened to trigger it. Has someone slowed down, maybe? Now this gives us a good opportunity to check the warnings. So Owen still only has his 3 warnings, and then Dino just got a 4th one this lap. So they're still pretty even on warnings. It seems like Owen's pushing a lot harder under safety car and is a lot closer to the delta as they make their way through the final corner onto the start-finish straight into La Source. This will actually, as now the virtual safety car has ended, has Owen been able to break the DRS? It's looking very tight, but I just think... Oh, Dino's just in DRS. This is spicy. As this has given everyone an opportunity to recharge their batteries a bit. And Dino's absolutely dumping as we move into Les Combes and cutting the curb really nicely. Now moving into this understeery bit of the track, because downhill corners tend to be quite understeery because you have additional weight on the front tyres because you're going downhill, and also additional, however, you also have more grip needed on the front tyres, as unfortunately Dino has spun on the curbs. This is really going to invite the Williams behind on the hards into the fight for second place, as it seems like Owen puts another finger of his on the winner's trophy for this race. It's going to be interesting see whether Dino's tyres are still cooked. Looking on the steering wheel, the temperatures seem to still be in double digits, so still fun, but it's going to be interesting to see if with that penalty, Dino can hold off the Williams behind and stay out of that 3-second range for the penalties. We can actually, we'll check the penalties now for the Williams. Only one warning at this point of the race so far, so looking good at this point in time. So it's interesting that they've done. This was the two-stopper who I talked about the strategy some time ago. I've forgotten what I was talking about before Dino spun. It doesn't matter. See that Adam Lepage is unfortunately not inside DRS, as just seems like the gaps are starting to balloon out at this point in the race. We're going to check the amount of penalties. So only 3-second penalties at this point. No one's got a 6-second yet. And then, so the biggest gainer is the Red Bull of Ziexo, who unfortunately has the penalty but is on soft tyres, so should, in the theory, be absolutely rapid compared to the 15-lap-old mediums of those ahead. But you can just see the amount of speed, how that might be a warning. You can just see how much more speed they're able to carry through the corners, although there is only a single lap left of this race, as it's actually seems to have gone by quite quickly. We'll see if anyone decides to go for fastest lap this lap. Actually, is there a way I can get up the fastest? As now we have the fastest lap from Ziexo of the 43.5, so that's actually really quick. It's almost as quick as the quali laps, which is quite impressive given that the track tends to be a bit faster in qualifying. Oh wait, sorry, we're on the penultimate lap. I misread the lap counter, given that I think Owen had crossed the line just before I read the thing, so we still have one more lap. As it seems like we have another one who wants to try and go for fastest lap on the soft tyres, trying to get that one extra point, which I haven't looked at the championship standings, but that could be a big deal. So you can see that the soft runner of Ziexo is closing up to the back of the AlphaTauri incredibly quickly, as I predicted, well, a minute or two ago. And deciding to save the battery for now, and has about 15% more battery at this point, and also is going a decent chunk quicker with the slipstream, which will also help saving the battery, because the faster you go in the straight, the less time it takes, so you spend less battery, and also your braking zone is a bit longer, so you save more battery, and also the faster you go, whereas the Red Bull, I wasn't expecting that. Are they doing DRS shenanigans? Seems to be a no to me, but I think it'd be interesting to see whether the battery can overcome the DRS, but I was not expecting that dive bomb. This is going to actually be really interesting, as they're both using up all the battery they have, and I think the AlphaTauri will be ahead, but the Red Bull just has so much more grip and is able to just go around the outside. as the AlphaTauri decides to cut the track after losing the rear end after contact. That penalty will probably get removed. Actually, is the put. It's only 3 seconds though, and actually that might give him P5 if he gets the penalty removed behind the Red Bull ahead, who unfortunately for them has a 3-second time penalty, although that won't affect anyone behind. So the gap right now is, as Owen has crossed the finish line quite uneventfully, and Dino has now got a 6-second time penalty, which is quite unlucky, which means that the Williams will actually secure P2 in this race, which will be a decent chunk of 18 points, as we now just have the final few people coming across the line now. Well done to Owen for winning the race. I think I'm going to be like the commentator in career mode and say, Ant, what do you think gave them the edge this race? I think it was the fact that they didn't spin on any of the curbs today. Instead of, oh, they handled the safety car well, because, my goodness, the safety car was handled fairly well by all of them. As Owen says in the Discord chat for Ero, that I found the pace today that I didn't know I had. I think Owen's a very quick driver. I would have expected him to be that fast personally. In terms of raw pace, I think he's a tad faster than I am, and I'm in PC1. Though I think typically his weakness has been his consistency, which I think he's improved a lot on today. If we go through the race results, there's quite a few penalties and 4 retirements, and only 10 people finishing on the lead lap, so you get a point as long as you finish on the lead lap. So we go through all the incidents now. You can see that on the stream, and then also the pit stops in case you want that. As I think the race is going to be basically over now. Again, well done to Owen on the win. So I think now is when I end the stream. So I guess